Today, we're answering more of your questions. Now, these are questions that show you really are thinking about making good property decisions, and we are here to help with expert answers.
Welcome to Your First Home Buyer Guide, the podcast for first home buyers who want to move it along and become homeowners. But most importantly, it is for you to become an educated home buyer.
I'm Meighan and that was Veronica. We're both buyer's agents and probably old enough to be your mum. But it's a good thing because between us we've got over 45 years experience to share with you and bucket loads of stories about avoidable mistakes. Together, we're going to make sure you get unbiased and real information you can rely on. Allow us to guide you on your home buying journey. We want you to become an educated home buyer so that you can stop looking for your first home and actually become a proud homeowner.
We've got loads of great tips for you in this episode, and if you'd like more useful tools, head over to the website homebuyeracademy.com.au, and there you'll get access to our free mini course, How to Price a Property Like a Professional. You will also find the holy grail of home buying education, Your First Home Buyer Guide, the online course for people who want to become educated home buyers. We created this for you to help you get on the right path to home ownership for your first home and beyond.
But before we get into the interesting stuff in this week's episode, we've got the boring bit, the disclaimer. You of course know that nothing in this podcast is to be taken as personal advice. We always recommend getting the advice of an expert in their field who takes the time to understand your personal situation. We've done our very best to ensure that the content is correct at the time of recording. Things change rapidly, so always check with the relevant government authority and your trusted advisors to get the most up-to-date information.
Today we're tackling questions sent in by our Facebook group members. But before we get into that, what's your special house this week in the video? That looks like something out of Star Trek.
You know I love the Airbnb OMG category. This is just across the ditch in New Zealand. You can actually go and stay in this if you head over to New Zealand.
Wow.
That's a spaceship that someone's put in their backyard. How cool is that?
It's cool, but it's also sort of weird because, like, you know, is that their pool over the back fence or is that the neighbour's pool?
I think that might be their backyard. So I literally think it's in their backyard.
Wow.
And you can maybe pop in the pool and have a cooling off in a very cold climate. But yeah, there you go.
A spaceship. Yes. Okay. So UFOs do exist and there is one.
Yeah, they're in New Zealand.
Backyard in New Zealand.
Landed in someone's backyard.
All right. Now, if you can have a backyard big enough to put a spaceship in, then you're doing quite well, aren't you?
Yes,
all right.
Yes. I couldn't agree more.
A couple of weeks back, we recorded an episode where we answered some of our Facebook group questions. And this week, we've got 4 more thought-provoking questions to cover in this episode. Do you want to hit us with the first one, Meighan?
Absolutely. Now, these guys said, we want to move to our dream location in a couple of years. However, we are not ready yet. Should we buy something there now and rent it out or wait until we have a bigger deposit?
So
I think this is a common question that other people would have.
It's a really common question. And I do get asked it, and I'm sure you do too, right? Yeah. And it's really good that these people have stopped to think about this rather than rushing in, because quite often people go either end of the spectrum and they can get it wrong. So by looking at the big picture now and how to use property as a stepping stone to your dream home, like that's big fat tick, right? Because the decisions that you make now will have an impact on your long-term goals.
Yeah.
So that is something. In fact, we did a whole episode back in episode 43. It's a long time ago now because this one is 193 on tips and things to consider when using the stepping stone strategy. And we even do a little tutorial on the stepping stone strategy. So that's, that's great, I guess. So if you're thinking about doing this, but let's get into the core of the question, I guess. Yeah. They're not ready yet. So should they buy now, rent it out, or wait till they have a bigger deposit? What do you think, Meighan?
Look, I think, as you say, the decisions you make now will have a really big impact on your long-term goals for a number of reasons. And I think one of the biggest ones is that people sometimes underestimate the impact that the decision now will have on their future borrowing capacity. So, some people say, all right, well, let's just buy in the area that we want to move to and we'll keep renting where we are. But there's a limitation on what they can borrow to buy in the area that they're interested in moving to in the future. Because they still have to pay rent. Yeah. So the equation sometimes doesn't quite work out. but at the same time, it gets them into the market. So that can be a positive, because if you're in the market and you've got an A-grade property and the prices are going up, then your property is going up probably better if you've chosen really well, better than the average in the area. Now, if you're going to stop and save your deposit, then you might miss out on that capital growth had you got yourself into the market. It's a really tough one, Veronica, and it's not an easy answer, and it's not a one-size-fits-all kind of answer, because you really want to be thinking, can we buy an A-grade asset with our borrowing capacity as it is at the moment, so that we will outperform the market, so that when we go to buy that future dream home in our dream location, we've done better than average. Now, that takes a fair bit of skill, particularly if you're buying in an area that you're not familiar with.
So I'm sort of reading into this question. I might have it wrong, but I'm sort of thinking, if you're a young couple and you're thinking, look, right now I'm living close to the city and I'm having a great whale of a time, and I'm going out all the time, even though I'm still saving up for my home. But I'm having a great lifestyle. My friends are all around, et cetera, et cetera. And you're thinking, I don't want to move to the suburbs yet. But when we have kids, I know we do want to move to the suburb. We're going to want more space then. We're going to want a backyard.
Some people want to live closer to parents.
Yeah, or that too.
When they have the children.
Yeah. Or, I'm going to move back. Yeah. And some people go back to where they grew up. So there might be a country town, or it could be Adelaide, because a lot of people go back to Adelaide apparently. But, or they're going somewhere where they can actually have a backyard big enough to put a spaceship in, because, you can't do that now. But I don't need a backyard big enough to put a spaceship in now. So
look,
it could be.
Trust me, when your boys are, 5, 6 years old, they'll love a spaceship in the backyard.
They'd love a spaceship. You won't be having Airbnb guests in there because the kids will be too noisy. But so the point being, though, the reason that they are not ready might not be because they don't have enough money, right? So they might actually be in a position to get into a market that we have no control over what might happen in the future. Like prices might just suddenly romp ahead. They might go backwards too. I mean, we just do not know really what's going to happen in the foreseeable future, right? So I guess what I would say is that if that's the reason that they're holding back, mainly because they are just not ready to live there, it's not that they're not ready to buy, then I would be looking at, well, what can I afford now? And is that the sort of property that I'm really going to be wanting to live in down the track? And if it looks like, oh God, if prices rose more faster than we could save, we would no longer be able to afford this property, then that is a good time and I guess a good circumstance to actually think, you know what, I need to go ahead and buy now. So I guess a lot of it is around when you're ready to buy. And, you can always save more if you're already ready, right? But if you can't outsave the market, then you could be looking at, say, 2 or 3 years' time thinking, you know what, if we had only acted, we'd be in a better position. So I guess it's that sort of thing. It's the safety net. If you know you're going to go there, you're going to be wanting that sort of home and you can afford it now, I don't really see the reason to wait if all other things are equal.
Yeah. Yeah, if you can afford both, to do both, rent where you want to live and have that property where you've put your money into it. And it's an interesting thing. So you and I have interpreted that question slightly differently, but I think the answers give a great deal of depth and insight into the different scenarios and how that might work for people. So,
which is precisely why we always say that this is not advice, because we don't know enough about your personal circumstances. We don't know enough
about you. Exactly. All right, let's have a look at the next question.
Okay.
What are you looking for in home and contents insurance? And do you have any organisations that you would recommend?
Now, the answer to the second part of that is no, but I feel like it's something we could do. I don't know. But anyway, maybe in the future we'll look into insurance. It is a great question.
I think the first question is to put our hands up and say, this is outside our wheelhouse. Okay,
100%.
So we talk about getting the expert in their field to talk to you about things inside their field. This is not in our field, but we can give you a general response.
But you know what is really challenging, and I found this same challenge myself, is how much do you insure your house for? And that is something that in years gone by, like I've contacted my insurance company and a lot of them have got these online calculators. We say, a bit like trying to work out your borrowing capacity or what a property is worth, online calculators, terrible idea. And I think it's the same with trying to work out what you should insure your property for as well. because I've plugged in the bricks and or whatever it's asked for my home, and it didn't cover what a renovation cost me.
Right, so it's certainly not going to cost, because you've got to cover things like demolition, removal of the debris from the site, clearing the site, redoing the plumbing, reattaching. You've got to think about if there was a catastrophic cyclone, probably not in Sydney, but, whatever the event is, and the place has to be completely removed and rebuilt, that's what you're looking at.
So you've got to make sure you're not under-insured. And so I would say I would recommend actually an Elephant in the Room episode here to listen to, which was episode 251. And it was with a fellow called Marty Sadlier from MCG Quantity Surveys. We've had Mike Mortlock, his business partner, on the podcast before. And these people know what it costs to build houses. They know what it costs to build buildings. And so you can actually get a report done, which is done by a quantity surveyor, the sort of people that do the estimators and that actually can work out what it costs to replace a building. And so if you're really, really concerned, which you probably should be, getting one of those reports done so that you're not under-insuring the building is a really good thing to do. So I think that's something to really bear in mind. And I know that, and even when you ring the insurance company, they'll give you all these disclaimers and go, well, we can't tell you how much to insure your property for. And you're sort of scratching your head saying, well, who can then? Who can?
That's right. And everyone goes, disclaimer.
Yes, so sad, too bad. And I mean, you don't want to be in Brisbane, for example, without flood cover.
Certain locations in Brisbane, not everywhere, Veronica. Not all of Brisbane floods. Come on,
I'm
so
winding you up.
Brisbane.
I know I'm very harsh on Brisbane, but
equally, when we look back, there have been surprises for some people that flood cover hasn't been an automatic inclusion in their insurance policy, that they should have taken it out as an extra cover. And that in fact, some insurers do not cover flood, which is rising water, but they will cover water that comes in through a defined event, which might be a storm, which causes a problem with your roof, and that water comes in. That's different to rising water. So understanding the policy exclusions is just as important as understanding what's included and what the defined events are.
Yeah. And also,
can you tell I used to sell insurance?
Did you? Really?
First job out of uni.
Oh, my God. I did not know that. You sounded good, though. You sounded really good. Look, also check out when you need to take out insurance, because in some states it's when you settle on the property, and in others it's when you go unconditional.
And in others, it's a number of days after contract date. So Queensland, it's by 5 p.m. the first business day after the contract date. So when you sign and date the contract. So very different in every jurisdiction.
Yeah. And in New South Wales, it's on settlement. So you've got a whole 6 weeks. The standard settlement is 6 weeks. You've got 6 weeks afterwards. So these are important things to understand. And we don't have any recommendations, but we do encourage you to use comparison sites, really, like, I guess, Finder or CanStar and those sorts of those sort of sites. And we'd love to hear from you as to what you discover if you actually do
join the Facebook group and tell us.
Let us know.
Jump on and add your thoughts to it.
Exactly right. Yeah. Right. Next question.
Is it better to buy a duplex property within your budget, or extend yourself by, say, 20 to 50% to purchase a detached property as a family home? Well, this has no answer.
Again, they're good thinking questions.
Depends,
though.
But it's a great question, because you're weighing up different property types.
Well, this is the thing too. And also there's a lot of assumptions that, you have to have a freestanding house. That's the only thing that goes up in value, but it's very much location specific, right? So some of the things to consider, right? Can you extend yourself now, or will this delay your purchase while you save more and wait for a promotion so that you can borrow more? So I'm saying promotion at jobs so you get a higher income or whatever. Yeah. So it is about thinking about, well, what do I need now? What are my requirements now? And, how long do I have to wait before I actually can change what I'm looking for? So that's something to think about.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the thing that I just want to go back to is the words extend yourself by 20 to 50%. We certainly don't encourage people to extend themselves beyond their financial means. That is not a piece of advice that we're giving out at all. What we do encourage people to do is buy the best property that they can within their budget. And I guess that's what we might take this question to is, if the budget is set by you and you feel comfortable at this level, but you could financially afford a property at this level, then which one would be better? If you can pay more now, what stage of life are you in? And do you already have a family? When do you envisage needing the extra space? We talk about the different life phases, and you don't want to sort of box yourself into too small a property if there is on the horizon some need to have a bigger property, because the costs of going into and out of a property, buying in and selling a property, are actually quite high. So you've got to experience a lot of capital growth to even cover those costs. But, if it's in a short time frame, like a 5-year time frame, that might be just too short. But if it's, 10 years plus, but you can afford a bigger home now, it might be a good idea to explore that bigger home option. So the shorter the time frame, the less you want to be turning over or changing your property.
Yep. And, if you can't afford to buy the bigger home now and need to save for longer, as we've said earlier, can you outsave the market?
Right.
Because if you can't, it is a good idea to learn about that stepping stone strategy we mentioned earlier. We've got a $39 tutorial that you can do to learn. There's 3 different types of buyers and there's 3 different types of strategies. And, not everyone can afford their forever home straight up,
Yeah.
and not even if you think, okay, well, if I save for 5 more years, the market can be very elastic at times, and it can actually run away from people, and all of a sudden, what's possible today isn't possible.
Yeah.
And we're not saying that everything goes up all the time and boom, boom, boom. It's not always like that. It's just that if that does happen and that actually closes a door on you as a first home buyer, you're particularly vulnerable to being left behind. And so we want you to be very aware of that. So rather than trying to save and stretch yourself and actually buy the big family home first cab off the rank, buy a really good first property that will work as a stepping stone, and that can solve that problem for you, I guess.
If you can afford that bigger home and that is your direction, then that would be a good decision. And then you don't have the in and out costs and the turnover costs. So
100%, if you can, great.
Yeah.
Don't agonise, just do it.
Overall, the question's really impossible to answer because we don't know enough about your unique situation. This is just a general response to a general type of question. So our next one, Veronica, and our final question in this session.
For this one is, when inspecting a property, what exactly should we look for? I always gravitate towards holes and crevices when mice may enter through, and look for signs of other pests. Also, how close are trees to the house to gauge whether or not there will be possum issues?
So this person's in Queensland.
They could. My girlfriend lives up the Central Coast, and they have possum issues.
They have possums as well.
Snake.
I'll tell you what, a possum party on your roof at 4 a.m. is horrible.
Yeah, her neighbour has a python living in the roof. So, and that's, mind you wouldn't have any vermin problems if you got a python living in your roof.
Are they? I mean, we do laugh, but, I certainly, it's really funny how we look at properties and look at them so differently. So there's a person who's concerned about, it sounds like possums, pests, vermin are high on her personal agenda. There's something there that she really wants to protect against.
Yeah.
In the majority of cases, these things can be overcome. If you've got trees that are a bit close, you might be able to cut them back. You can also vermin-proof, you can possum-proof. There are people who have jobs as doing this. They get the possum out of the ceiling during the night and they make sure all of the little holes that they could possibly get into, usually got some babies up there as well. These sorts of things in majority of cases can be overcome. The property inspection is a huge component of the due diligence process that we go through in your first home buyer guide, the flagship course, of course. It's part of the evaluation module. And doing that inspection properly and thoroughly gets you a lot of intelligence, a lot of information that you can use to evaluate the property, not just from its livability and how much you like it and whether you want to buy it, but how much you should pay for it as well, and the sorts of things that you need to budget for in terms of maintenance and bringing it up to a standard that would possum-proof and mouse-proof it. And then when you do that, you can say, all right, well, I can deal with these issues. What is it about the house that I don't like, and what is it actually worth to me?
Yeah. I mean, look, to get a taste of what to look for, back in episode 99, we actually did an episode all about that. So you can have a listen to that one. But, I think when I'm looking through houses, it's funny, I record videos for clients and I do sort of like a stream of consciousness as I'm walking through and talking about, looking at things and think, oh, I don't like that. Or I look at all sorts of stuff. I look at ceiling heights. I smell, I sniff and I want to, if I can smell damp. I'm looking for evidence of poor maintenance. I want a house that I know somebody's loved and looked after for a long time, not just started up for sale.
Yeah.
I'm looking for all sorts of things like that. So, I mean, I look through it. Often one of the first things I look at when I walk into the house is the floorboards, because of course I'm in an older area of Sydney and some houses have had new boards put down, others haven't. And there's this patchwork quilt of, old
maybe some borer
floorboards.
holes in them. Yep.
Yeah, heaps of borers and also, cypress pine here and kauri pine there and hardwood there and all sorts of mishmash. They're the sorts of things that I look for. And I will walk through and I will notice where there's damp, risk of damp, where the floor plan's crap, where there's stairs and you think, oh, that's really awkward. I will look at all that sort of stuff as well.
Livability, where to place furniture.
Absolutely.
You'd be surprised at how many places we walk through and go, where would you put the couch so that it faces a TV, or do you have to sit side on to actually watch the TV? Now, that sounds like, oh, really, Meighan? But in terms of practical layout, you want to think about this stuff.
Yeah, you want to make it easy to live. You want a house that's easy to live in. And natural light is another one. You walk into a house and the agents put every single light on in the house. You think, oh, why have they done that? It's
let's turn it off and see how that feels.
Yeah, I actually joke sometimes because sometimes I walk in and flick off all the lights and it's actually a bright house and I'm thinking, why do you even need to do that? Why did you do that? So
let the house shine on its own.
Yeah. Have a bit of fun. And, depending on different climates as well, you can look for different things. For example, cross-flow ventilation, very, very important in a hot climate. In a cold climate, I want to make sure that place has got heating and really good insulation,
A bit of sunshine.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're in Queensland, in warmer climates, you're looking for how is the house protected from the sun. And in the southern states where it's a bit cooler, you're looking for, well, where does the sunshine get in and warm this place up?
Yeah.
So it's very dependent on the area that you're looking in, and you've got to have your checklist that's right for not only what you want, but what a future buyer wants. Because if you're looking for a property that you might sell in the future, we know that capital growth is largely determined by your future buyer pool. And that is hopefully other owner occupiers who see it as a wonderful place for their family to live. And that's why they'll push themselves to pay a premium price.
And it is important to remember that in every area, there are specific things that buyers will look for. And I think what this sort of alludes to in a bushy area, she didn't mention bushfire risk either, but, the pest risk or the wildlife risk, is something that I don't have to worry about in inner city Sydney, right? I don't have to worry about that. Mind you, there have been rats around. You get rats in the inner city. But so there are certain things that in every area you do have to be thinking, okay, what is going to be a turn-off for the buyers in this area? And can I fix it or can't I? And if you can't fix it, then there's the sorts of things that we look at as being deal breakers versus things that might turn off buyers now, but you think, I can address that.
I can actually fix it.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, totally. Yep, absolutely.
Right.
Yeah. All right, so these questions largely came from our Facebook group, which is a private group that we set up so that people could talk to us. It is called Your First Home Buyer Guide Australia, and it is your opportunity to connect with us and ask us your questions. You'll get answers from us, which means that you can be sure you're not going to be led down the garden path.
And a quick note, all the answers that we gave you today and any other podcast, you might think that we cover everything you need to know in these podcasts, but a word of warning, we don't. We're only scratching the surface. If you really want to be an educated first home buyer, you need to learn all of the steps, how to do everything in the right order.
Our first home buyer guide only costs $990 and you get direct access to us to help guide you through your negotiations. Like this, in a forum like this, you are actually asking us questions. You can send us a link of a property you're interested in thinking about buying. We can help you work out whether it's A, B, C grade or an absolute no-go zone. And trust me, we will be very honest. You'll buy better with our guidance and you'll overpay by a heck of a lot more than $1,000 if you don't know what you're doing.
In today's campfire, I was chatting with one of our students, and he is just starting to work out where, he and his wife want to live. And they're not originally from Sydney, so they've got lots of choice in what they're looking at. So I really pointed them to, they were concerned about being in areas that are sort of lower socioeconomically, and they were worried about sort of, resale long term and lots of other reasons around there. And so I quickly showed them a map that they could use to quickly work out where are the no-go zones and where are the go zones in a location. And I mean, that saved them, I reckon, probably months of trudging around trying to work it around themselves. Yeah. And that's the sort of thing we do in Campfire.
Look at that little piece of gold. Look at you.
A
I'm very
nugget.
proud of you.
What a nugget. All right.
Wonderful.
In this episode, we've only touched on a tiny part of the huge amount of things you need to know to become an educated first home buyer. There is so much more for you to do. You can learn all of the steps in the right order and avoid all of the mistakes that others have made in our 10-step online course for first home buyers.
If you'd like to learn more about the right process and avoid making rookie errors, become an educated home buyer. Head over to the website, check out your first home buyer guide, the course that we have created for you. And don't forget to subscribe to the podcast so you won't miss an episode. And if you've liked what you've heard today, please give us an iTunes review. It helps other people find us. And of course, I know it's a bit cringy, but we're going to ask for 5 stars. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. We hope you found this really useful. And if you have, please share the love with others who you know are in the same boat. We'll be back next week with more priceless stuff.